Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
I am so excited that you are here. We've got to connect, I feel like virtually, and then we've gotten to connect at CPC in person.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about this more, but you posted something on social media a couple weeks ago and you were like, don't hate me, but I have too many volunteers. And you were like, how do I structure them? How do I create
Mhm.
more roles? I don't want to turn
Mhm.
volunteers away. And so, like, you're sitting in this really unique position as a leader, being like, I don't know what to do with all these people that want to serve in kids' ministry.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, I need you to come on the podcast because I want to talk about your leadership and how you're leading this team. And so I am so thrilled that you are here. But before we jump into all the volunteer stuff, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little about maybe where you're currently serving in kids ministry and all any fun things you want to share.
Yeah. So my name is Meghan Graham. I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is just east of Nashville on the way towards Chattanooga. So right off the interstate there. And I serve at a church called City Church. It's a relatively new church. We still kind of consider ourselves a church plant, about 14 years old. And I live here with my husband, Will, and I have a cat named Sophie. And yeah, I love to bake. I love to create things, sew, cross stitch, crochet, all. If I can make it with my hands, I want to do it.
Nice. What great hobbies. That's so
Mhm.
great. And then so tell us how long you have been in your position at City Church.
Yeah, I've been here since January, so that would be about 9 months.
Okay, so fairly new, which is exciting.
Mhm.
I feel like that first year in a new role, it's just kind of like you're learning so much, trying to
Mhm.
figure out the culture and getting to know your families. But then you also told me before we hit record is that your church is growing, which
Yes.
so
Yeah.
not only are you getting to know the church, but you're also navigating growth, which is a whole
Yes.
other conversation. And so I would love for you to walk us back a little bit, maybe to like the beginning of the year when you were new to the position. What did your volunteer team look like at that point?
Mhm.
And what were you thinking as you were coming into this position with the team that you started with?
Yeah. So when I came, I have an associate who works with me. She's part time. Her name's Jenna. She's wonderful. But I have her that was kind of handling everything and handles all the scheduling. And so when I came in, I actually looked at stuff and it seemed incredibly healthy to me. Of course, there were still holes. And even though I would say, like, maybe we have too many volunteers, we still have holes that happen on Sunday. So,
Yeah.
we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I looked at overall and how they structured things and how they were scheduling things and the amount of people that were volunteering for a church our size in kids ministry. I looked at it, I was like, this is incredibly healthy. Like, we're in a really good space.
Mhm.
And so it was actually kind of like a sigh of relief. Like, the first thing that I had to do when I came in wasn't immediately recruiting.
Yeah.
Of course, yes, I have to recruit. I have to maintain that amount, but it wasn't a stressful, overwhelming, "Oh my gosh, we don't have enough volunteers." It was in an incredibly healthy place, but we have, refined that process too to get to where we are. So, yeah.
That's awesome. What are some things so whenever you start a new job, you know this, I know this, is that part of the job is keeping all the volunteers because sometimes when there's a leadership transition, volunteers use that as oh, I can step down. I don't need to serve anymore. There's a new leader. All of those types of things come with leadership transition. Was there anything specific that you really were intentional about when it came to interacting with volunteers for the first time or even like the second or third time and trying to encourage people to stick around? Or sometimes there's just a really healthy church culture to begin with. And so it probably might be a combination of both. Did you do anything on purpose?
Yes. So, one, we do have an incredibly healthy church culture. Every single covenant member is expected to serve somewhere in the church. And so that contributes, and we hold people accountable to that,
Mhm.
right? Like, I know kids ministry isn't the right fit for everyone, but we hold people accountable to that. So when people step back from kids ministry, understand, totally fine. have you considered serving somewhere else in the
Yeah.
church, that might be a better fit for your schedule and things like that? But one thing that I very intentionally did when I started was I set up a link to Calendly so if you don't have Calendly in ministry, you should because it's amazing. And I set up a Calendly link and just sent it out to volunteers and said, "I want to buy you a cup of coffee and let's get to know each other." I probably met with, I don't know, I'm going to say like 20 volunteers and parents over the course of that first month or two, just getting to know people. And I stuck it in, that link in my emails. I had it on a QR code when people checked in. Like, I want to get to know you and I want to hear what's going on in your life
Mhm.
and, see what the Lord's doing in your life and hear about what's going on and what are ways that we can refine things to make it work better for everyone as a whole.
Yeah. That's so smart. Just that simple connection point of, "Hey, I want to connect." And it's not like
Mhm.
sometimes people like I've had this happen where I've had parents or volunteers be like, "Oh, you're probably so busy, but I would love to talk to you." And it's like, "No, no. I want to make time for you. I want to get to know you." And so I think that's such a smart idea, especially when you're new to a role, but also if you have a growing church and you have a huge open door of people coming in all the time, like, this would be a really good way to just introduce yourself to people and make yourself available, and so I think that is such a smart idea, and that way you're able to have some of these one-on-one conversations because we know that when you have some of these conversations, those things, like, trickle out to other people. Oh, it's like, "Oh, I met with Megan last week, and she's so nice, and she talked about this and blah, 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 blah." Like, those things impact the culture. It's not just this kind of, like, isolated incident, right? People are
Mhm.
talking to people. People are sharing about how they had coffee or lunch or talked to or things that they're excited about, and that really kind of impacts your volunteer culture.
Mhm.
And so you started out, you had this team of people, you worked really intentionally to keep the team that you did have. What were some big things or some big goals kind of throughout 2025 of like, I need to recruit for this?
Yeah. So we had really kind of a pivotal moment in our church that I would say, and I think other staff members would agree, was Easter of this year for our church and for our culture. We have one thing that we say at our church is we cultivate and we don't consume. That is, we have 6 pillars as a church that when you sign to be a covenant member, you're agreeing to do these things. And the first one of that is that you cultivate and you don't consume in a worship gathering. You're here to serve other people, not to serve yourself and to
Mm,
consume and take and leave. And so on Easter this year, we did I don't remember exactly what we called it, but it was basically Cultivate 2025. We want every single covenant member serving at the church on Easter. We normally have
wow.
2 services, we went to 3 services. So for that day, so we had tons of spaces and we had people signing up for that. And so one of my big goals after we did that and we had to really think creatively because we had this overwhelming, in a good way, response of, okay, well, that class might end up having more adults than children. So
Yeah.
how do we navigate this? And so we had to creatively think of what are purposeful ways and purposeful places we can put people. And so that was we beefed up kind of our like greeter, or we call it a host team. We
Mhm.
have lots of people serving in that way and other ways. So one of my goals from that was to really capitalize on those that were interested in serving in kids ministry.
Mhm.
And so we gained, I want to say like 7 or 8 new volunteers from people serving for the first time on Easter alone. I
That's
might
a
be wrong
lot.
on the number, but it's somewhere around in there. And so that was one of my goals, was to continue that process. And then another one of my goals, so Jenna, the associate, she went on maternity leave. And it really helped me find the systems because she was doing a great job,
Right.
but she was part-time. And so it helped me kind of see what was going on and how we could improve and recruit more and see better all of our like all of our systems and rotations because it
Mhm.
just felt like things were a little not cha I don't wanna say chaotic because it
Right.
wasn't, but they could be refined to where it's a smoother process.
Mhm.
And to give you an idea, our average attendance on a Sunday is about 4 to 500, somewhere around in there, and we have I wanna say we're probably around 130, 135 kids ministry volunteers from that, which is incredible, and some of those are youth as well. So we really had to figure out as we continue to have more people interested, I have like, I want to say 5 upcoming meetings with potential volunteers coming up soon.
That's
We've
crazy.
really had to refine those systems of
Yeah.
we've got to stay on this because when you have that many people, you just have to have a smooth system so people don't get lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have 4 to 500 adults on a Sunday.
No, all in all, kids and
Okay, kids
adult.
and
Yeah.
adults. How many kids are you seeing on Sunday?
Like I think like 150, 160,
Okay.
or so. Yeah, we are a
Yeah.
very young church.
Yeah. But 150 kids is a lot of kids.
It is a lot of kids.
And so do your volunteers serve every Sunday?
No. So
Okay.
we ask that they choose one of 3 commitments. So they serve either every week, which we have less than 10 people who do that,
Okay.
maybe less than 5. Then every other week, which I would say 60% of our volunteers serve every other week
Yeah.
or twice a month, and then or once a month. So we have the rest would be once a month people.
Yeah. How do you keep track of when volunteers like how often volunteers want to serve? What does that look like? Because I think sometimes people get confused as they're going to the scheduling. They're like, oh, this person serves once a month, but this person serves every other week, and this person serves. How do you keep track of all of that?
A Google sheet.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we had to repeat our systems, unfortunately. The system that we use, and I've used tons of different systems, but there's not a feature where you can see all the volunteers in the schedule at one time.
Yes.
So, which is huge. So that's kind of a logistical or logistics thing where you need to be able to see everybody at once. So we have a Google Sheet, which I'm a little bit of a nerd on this. They released some really cool new features in Google Sheets that
Ooh.
help with data management. So it's called Tables. Look at it. Super fun.
Okay.
So like you can easily add in like drop down menus and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So we have a master list of all of our volunteers that's updated one time a month, and that has their name, their class preference, their serving rotation, all that kind of stuff. Then we have on that same document, we have our volunteer rotation. So that's our master rotation list
Okay.
where it's color coded, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. I love it. Very type A. Um, but that way you can see these are our volunteers very clearly and where they rotate all in one place. So if we need, which we still have spots available and places that we need people to serve, um, but that's in very like bold letters that we need an adult here or we need a youth leader here.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so you can very clearly see that. Then we import all that into our church management system to do the scheduling.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you try and have people serve the same Sunday every month? Like here's
Yes.
first Sunday team, second Sunday team.
Yes. And so this
Yeah.
is actually a relatively new system for us. It's like a month and a half, 2 months old, something like that.
Uh-huh.
But it's going really well. And we are holding people responsible to their commitments.
Yeah.
Which I feel like for some people that's like a scary thing,
Right.
but if you agree to serve at church for once a month, you need to serve for one Sunday a month.
Yes.
And so what we found in our previous way of scheduling was we did a 2-week rotation. And so you were like every other week. But in this system, we have a full month rotation because what we found with that previous rotation was our one time a month people would get lost.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that because you've agreed to serve, you want to serve, and we need to make sure that you're being scheduled.
Mhm.
It's a partnership and it's a agreement. They're agreeing to serve, you're agreeing to schedule them.
Yeah.
And so people would get lost because if you like sent out the request and they couldn't be there that week, then you might forget about it and then they don't get scheduled for the month.
Yes.
And so this rotation works really well for us. So you have someone, they might serve on the first and third Sunday, first service. They're going to do that every single month. And then
Mhm.
if they can't be there, we have sub procedures. And then for fifth Sundays, we ask that people serve an additional Sunday per the amount that they serve a month, which is very confusing. It makes sense in my head. I said, I promise that's all that it needs to make sense on. But
Right, exactly.
we do the scheduling. But there's 4 fifth Sundays in a year.
Mhm.
If you serve on the first week a month, you serve on the first fifth Sunday of the calendar year. If you serve on the second Sunday of the month, you serve on the second fifth Sunday of the year. And yeah,
Wow.
so that way, I like the idea of fifth Sunday teams, but they serve so infrequently that
Yeah.
it can make it really hard. So we're just asking, like, if you serve twice a month, you're going to serve an additional 2 Sundays a year. So if you serve once a month, you're serving 13 Sundays instead of 12.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't had a fifth Sunday yet on this schedule, but I think,
November.
been, yeah,
It's coming.
yeah, yeah.
That's okay, I love how organized this is. It brings me so much joy. When you rolled this out, what what was, like, the feedback? What was when you were like, "Okay, everybody, if you serve the first Sunday of the month, you're now going to serve the first 5th Sunday of the year," or whatever you communicated. What was the feedback? Because I sometimes it's hard to, like, steer the ship in a new direction, and
Mhm.
so what did the rollout process look like?
So the rollout process was done in phases. So the first kind of phase was me just looking at everything when we had someone new come into schedule for our associate during her maternity leave, discovering she had a lot of questions about it,
Mhm.
which was fine. And so I'm digging into it more than I used to. So I see the problem, or the confusion where the confusion was. So decided, okay, this just has to be overhauled. So what I started doing was I communicated with or with our team leads that we have on Sundays that basically manage the logistics of a Sunday morning.
Mhm.
And I kind of let them know, like, hey, just so you know, some things are happening. We're working on scheduling. I contacted I want to say every single adult that served in some way and just said, I just want to confirm some new things, some exciting changes are coming. And that's going to make your life easier. Always say it's hopefully going to make your life easier. And I want you to like just confirm that you are always free on the first and third Sunday of the month. Because some people work, they
Right.
might always work the second Sunday. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. And so I kind of started like slowly telling people. Then we have a group me for everyone. I sent like, hey, in 2 weeks, just want to let you know there's going to be a lot of changes. Um, and exciting things that are going to help us continue to grow. But when you see that message in a few weeks, please take the time to read it. I
Yes.
start prepping people like an exciting things coming. You're building up
Yeah.
the excitement. You have people in your corner, you have key leaders who want to talk it up and be excited about it.
Mhm.
And so they can help spread the culture. And then you do the drop and you run away and hope everything doesn't fall apart, which it didn't. So that was great.
You're like,
You're
"Going
like,
on
send, and
vacation,
I'm,
bye."
yeah, yeah. Don't ask me any questions. I'm out. No, everyone's response was really great. We only had a couple people that, um, it's an adjustment in their
Right.
mind, and change is hard. Like I give people grace because change is difficult. I
Mhm.
hate change. Legitimately, I cannot stand it. If we were going out to eat with my family recently and we had planned on one thing and then last minute they were like, "Hey, let's change." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like it doesn't compute in my mind. So I have a lot of grace for people who struggle with change,
Mhm.
but I also know this is this is where we're going and this is why we need to get there. And
Yeah.
change can be good. It might be rough. And I told everybody this is going to be a transition period. It's not going to be perfect on the first day, but we're
Mhm.
going to get there. And I think everybody could see the value in it because they understood, they were the ones getting the messages every single Sunday, like, hey, we need somebody to fill in this
Yeah.
room and all that kind of stuff. So they really saw the value in it and they saw the need. And because I had taken the time to go grab coffee with volunteers,
Mhm.
I looked like, okay, who serves in each room? I think I tried to meet with someone who served in every single room and hear their feedback. How do you feel like our scheduling process is going? How do you
Mhm.
feel like, tell me, like, I want to know. And it doesn't mean that all their feedback I'm going to use,
Right.
but it does give me an idea of where we stand.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the rollout phases is so smart. And the building anticipation of like, hey, something is coming, something is coming. You're going to get an email. Please read the email. Like that is so wise because it just not only are you preparing your team, but you're not making this hard right turn, which I
Hmm.
think sometimes people and ministry leaders have a brilliant idea and they're like, we're doing this tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's where it's hard for people to follow because you change so frequently. And with this long on ramp, you kind of have people prepared. And I don't know, sometimes when I hear like something is coming, I kind of prepare for like the biggest option of like
Hmm.
the most dramatic thing. And then to be like, oh, we're just scheduling volunteers differently. It feels like, oh, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not like you ask people to serve more consistently or change a big thing. You're like, no, we're actually making this process a lot easier for people. And I can't
Hmm.
imagine the hours that you put into this, which I think is so important to remember if kids ministry leaders are trying to implement something new or trying to change the culture. It's you spent so much time connecting with leaders, helping your team leaders understand what's coming so that they could answer questions when they get questions. It's like all of those things take a lot of time. And so I assume that when you thought seasonally, when you were like, okay, here's a new season, let's plan, let's figure out what my schedule looks like, you kind of know it's like, okay, we're making this big change. I'm going to have to commit a lot of hours to this.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. It it was a ridiculous amount of hours. Um, it really was. I mean,
Yeah.
there were weeks where the majority of what I did was looking at this awful spreadsheet. Like,
Hmm.
I was so over it by the end. I'm like, "If I never have to look at this again." And I printed out, like, every single day because I'm also like I want my screen, but I also want the piece of paper
Yes.
next to me so I can write. I'm kind of like I like to live in both worlds.
Same.
And, like, every day I was printing out a new copy, and we've really gotten it down, and in each of our classes now have a group me, and one thing that was part of my vision and part of our desire as a church for this year is intentional leadership development
Huh.
and pouring into people and building people up. So, one thing that I actually started back in I wanna say March, maybe February, shortly after I started here, because that's kind of been our thing for this year has been leadership development, and I developed a plan that we were gonna have a class lead for every single class. This was
Okay.
before we did any of the scheduling stuff. So the requirements for that were they served at least 2 Sundays a month. The normal stuff like they need to we call it a non-anxious presence, so they're not the people that are panicking.
Uh-huh.
They're calm and they can help problem solve. And so I called out individuals that served in each of our 7 yeah, I'm on the hallway now, so I think 7 classes. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. Um and plus our host team, so it's 8 in
Mhm.
total, and I called out leaders, I said, "Hey, I see you're doing a great job. I've been able to poke my head in, and I see how you interact with kids and other volunteers. You're stepping up in this way. Would you be interested in this?" And so, I was building that up in the spring,
Mhm.
not knowing that we were revamping the schedule, and that
Yeah.
actually really helped me. Um and our groups, because now each of our group me's, which I'm in every single one of them, and I do recommend that, but turn them on mute because I don't need you don't need all those notifications
No.
for each individual group. But they are in charge of their group and not in scheduling, they don't do the scheduling, but helping set the tone and the culture within the volunteers within that
Mhm.
group.
Yeah.
And so they have been able to help in this process. And we have a group me for each single class. And in that group me is their rotation schedule pinned at the top and the sub procedures also pinned at the top. Those two things don't change. So when I was doing all of this scheduling, some of the groups, I'm like, I'm just going to wait 2 weeks before I redo the schedule in here. It's not, I know it's not accurate, but y'all don't want 17 notifications and you're just going to get confused. And I do delete the old one. So don't leave it in the chat because
Right.
people are going to be like, which one's the right one? Just toss it in there and it's going to be up to date in the group. And so that way they have a quick place to access it.
Yeah. That's so smart. I'm curious, what are some of the things that your class leaders say to their team? Like if they're not doing the scheduling, what are some things that you have seen them do to set the culture and set the tone of their class?
Yeah, so I'll actually pull up a message right here. I was super impressed with one of our class leads. So um I'll brag on her. So she said she's gonna check in and every so often, which I ask our class leads to check in with your group what at least one time a month. Some are doing more,
Mhm.
but before the first Sunday of the month. So that's
Okay.
in their rhythm at the end of the month or before the first Sunday of the month. Just send a message. And so um does anyone have anything encouraging to share from your classes lately or helpful advice? One thing from this past week for me is just how much the kids want you to be with them, and even coloring beside them seemed like a big deal. Someone responded, "This boy named James and I are best friends, and he's told me 11 times." So I'm super encouraged because this is the 3-year-old class.
Yeah.
James is everyone's best friend, but um, but I love that because they're sharing a culture.
Mhm.
We had another one this past Sunday. Where is that message? Um, she said, "Some encouragement today. Today in the second service in Pathfinders and City Navigators, those are our elementary rooms. We had two new visitors. Our kids and volunteers were so welcoming and included them as part of our City Kids family with ease. When one of the kids got picked up, the first words that came out of his mouth to his mom were, 'I want to come back next week.'" And,
Oh,
and
that's
she
so
said, "Okay,
cute.
we will." Yeah. And so what we do matters. Creating an environment where kids feel safe, seen, and like they belong results in parents coming back to church every week with their kids. And both of them hear the gospel and both of them experience the family of the church. And this is multiplying because we're big on multiplication. So this is what this looks like. So she was taking the words that she's hearing in sermons and she's hearing through the
Mhm.
culture of our church and encouraging our group and our classes with that same language because we're all on the same mission. So
Yeah.
we're on a ship that's going in the same place. We all have the same, we're not the illustration that popped in my head is like a vacation Bible school. If every single room is doing an under the sea theme, but
Mhm.
one room decorated like a construction theme, you're like, what is going on here? You're
Yes.
all on the same theme. You all have. So she's taking these items from different room or different things she sees
Mhm.
happening in the church and encouraging her group with those. We have one that every week is asking, what can I be praying about for you? And things come from that. You're like, I didn't know that they were having surgery in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like those are important things to know. So they're just setting the culture in their rooms. So that's
Yeah.
really what they're there for, is helping set that culture.
Mhm. How much coaching did you have to do to get your class leads to that point? Or did you just choose people did you just choose people that were that way to begin with? Or did you have to encourage and coach them on how to lead a class?
I think it's a little bit of both. There are people that I saw that I'm like, man, you could be running this whole thing. Like,
Mhm.
you're great. But there's others that I saw a lot of potential in. And so calling those people out and calling them into more. Like you have the skills and you have the ability to do this. And so let's go once again, grab a cup of coffee together. Let me buy you some coffee and let's sit down and let's talk about what exactly this looks like and what why I think you're capable of this.
Mhm.
And people don't always realize they have the skills for this. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago that people do these type of things in their jobs.
Yes.
People are leaders in their jobs. We have principals, we have a CFO of a hospital. We have, all these different types of things, but they don't see it as translating to church.
Mhm.
And so part of our job in that leadership development is saying, no, you have these skills. I see these skills in you. Let's just move it over here. Let's apply these skills over here. And so we sat with people. They had required reading that they had to read through. And we got together once as an entire group and talked about it. And that's where I shared with those key leaders our new scheduling process. And, I've admitted I'm not perfect. I'm going to mess up and we're going to have to refine this system to
Mhm.
make it work better. But this is how we're going to start and let's get this thing going together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gosh, that's so great. I love utilizing team leaders, class leaders, coaches, directors, whatever you want to call them,
Mhm.
because exactly what you just said of there are people who are so incredibly gifted that just don't realize that the church needs their gifts
Mhm.
and can use their gifts. And so to bridge the gap and say, hey, you may not be a teacher, you may not be a child therapist, but your skills as a CEO, as whatever position they have can translate over into kids ministry and can
Mhm.
translate over into the leadership opportunities that we have. And sometimes it just helps, it just takes people a second to realize that. I mean, I always say, like, when people are trying to recruit lead volunteers or coaches, I always say, look outside the people who are serving in your kids ministry. There are some people who maybe are not the best in the classroom, but they're so good at rallying people, encouraging people, bringing people along, doing some of those really administrative tasks, and they can still be used in and through the kids ministry. And it's just so sometimes it's just like look around, like open your eyes a little bit and see all the different giftings that you can point out. And I think it starts with exactly what you did of you pointed out things that you were seeing. You said, I see this in you. And then that only encourages them to turn around and do the same thing and
Mhm.
say, hey, I see this in you, or I see the way that God is working in this way and impacting kids. It just like you have set the tone for your leadership team imperfectly. Obviously, nobody can do it perfectly, but then that creates such a culture of noticing God. And that's what you want in a team in kids ministry is you want to notice where God is at work in the lives of your kids, in your volunteers, in your families, because that's something that people want to be a part of.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, okay, I want to continue talking about your leadership team because you've got these class leads, which are incredible. They're doing a great job. What else? How else have you utilized volunteers that don't look like a typical volunteer role of
Yep.
you're serving in a classroom?
Yeah. So we have a host team and they're wonderful. So we have one person that is scheduled every service. We still are recruiting for that spot. But we have one person that serves every service as our new family check-in. And they are just there to greet new families and they're there to welcome them. And our first impressions team that we have, so I'm going to steal from them, but every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday.
Yeah.
And we have to be ready for guests. And so
Mhm.
we are very, very intentional as a church about what the first time guest experience is like coming to our church because people don't give churches a second chance for the
No.
most part. If there's something they don't like because they're coming in with a critical eye. So we have to be on our A game every single Sunday. So we have that new family check-in person. Then we have door holders. These are people that stand at our doors. So we have a long hallway and the kids hall is in the lobby. You can see very, very clearly, so signage is wonderful, where you go with your kids. So we have 2 door holders that stand there, and they have personality, they're greeting kids, they're giving high fives, but they also serve as our safety and security
Mm,
on the kids' hallway. So, there are a lot of times being someone who, like, let me in the middle of service, let me just make sure that, like, if we don't know the person, "Hey, do you have your sticker?" We check
yeah.
stickers and things like that. And they're also serve a little bit as floaters of like, "Hey, can you hold this crying baby for a little bit?"
Yes.
Um, and then we have people who or one person, that serves each service as team leader. So they're the person that allows us as staff to be able to go to service.
Mhm.
Um, so they're managing everything and, if somebody needs more copies in their room, they're getting the sheet and they're going and making copies. If they are out of wipes, they're going and finding the wipes and pulling them for the volunteers, and that allows and frees myself and Jenna, the associate, up to be able to attend service, to build relationships with people, because that is such an important time, um, to be able to do that and to be able to talk with people. You do this job all week.
Mhm.
Those people are here for a few hours on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And so it is super important for you to be present with those people. Um, and so we have those. We also have a curriculum team that comes in during the week and sets everything up for us. So we have all of our curriculum on a Google Drive. They come in, they print it out, they put in the binders, they pull the supplies. I was just texting one of our curriculum team leads, saying, "Hey, just so you know, be sure to save that blue tablecloth because we're using it 2 weeks in a row." Silly
Mhm.
things like that. And then we also have people who come in and they might help with special projects. So we have someone that, "Hey, just so you know, like the doorstop in that room fell off. Can you come in and fix it?" And they serve in that way. And we're super grateful for them. We have floaters, that are just available to
Mhm.
go where we need. Then we also have a sub list, so we understand that people have crazy schedules,
Yeah.
and they might not feel like they can commit to every single first Sunday of the month, and
Mhm.
their schedules fluctuate too much, and we say, "That's great," but we have this subgroup that we're gonna post last minute needs in,
Yeah.
and you are able to say, "Yep, I've got that," and get it covered.
Mhm.
And so we really appreciate that team as well.
Does your
Um,
sublist team have a group me also? Is that where you post things?
yes, they have a group me, and that one is not as much culture building just
Yeah.
because they're kind of our last minute people. And I think every single person on our sub list serves in other places in the church,
Right.
but they do have a passion for, we understand that you need people. We just can't commit to doing it every single week.
Mhm.
And so we have them on our team, and that gives them the freedom to commit to when they can do it, but
Yeah.
they are serving in other places in the church as well.
Yeah. What an incredible team. That is so great. I'm curious. I feel like I'm going to ask the question that everyone's asking right now is how do you recruit? So if there's somebody like it everybody wants to go to church. Everybody wants to free up their time and not do curriculum. And they want to have volunteers who love doing that. Like they want to create this margin in their life so they can revamp the schedule or work on XYZ. And so if they're like, yes, I want this, how do I get the people? Where do I find the people? What are some of your best recruiting tips?
Honestly, my recruiting job is pretty easy because we have just a culture at our
Mhm.
church. And if it is not built in and ingrained in the culture that
Yeah.
every single covenant member serves somewhere in this church, it's gonna be incredibly difficult. Like
Mhm.
I said earlier, we have this phrase that we say, "Cultivate, don't consume." So, we don't want people here just consuming. We aren't the church for that, and we
Yeah.
know that. Like, we aren't gonna become a mega church because we ask a lot of our people because
Mhm.
Jesus demands a lot from us.
Yeah.
And we hold people accountable to that. We understand that there are seasons where people
Yeah.
have to step back, somebody died or, like you're taking care of a elderly parent or you're pregnant and, we understand those things
Mhm.
and there's seasons where you don't serve, but it's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
And that is something that comes from the top down. And so when we put out a need, people understand where our ship is going. They
Mhm.
understand the destination, and the elders of our church, have set the vision, and the people determine how quickly we get there. And so
Yeah.
they understand that when there's a need, we have to jump in on it. So a lot of it's just making needs known and calling people out. And simply asking them one phrase, that I think would be very practical for people to implement would be, "Would you be interested in talking more about this?" You're not asking them to do it immediately.
Yeah.
You're not saying, "Hey, sign on the dotted line today." You're saying, "Hey, I have seen you interacting with kids in the lobby on Sunday mornings, and you are fantastic with them. I
Mhm.
think you can make a great fit for this specific position.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in sitting down and talking about this? Here's a link to my Calendly. Let's meet at this coffee shop, whatever the favorite coffee shop is of, the people there. And let's just grab a cup of coffee,
Mhm.
to discuss what this looks like,
Yeah.
because I think you're capable of this. I think
Mhm.
that, and I see this in you. Um, one specific example, which this wasn't a person that I recruited. Well, I did recruit him, but somebody on staff said, "You need to ask him."
Mm.
And he had never served in kids before and said, "Just ask him." And so I said, "Hey, would you be willing to do this?" And so he said, "Yeah, yeah, I think I'd like to try it on a trial basis." Perfect. I partnered him with a close friend of his.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
close friend. They're my favorite, like, teaching duo. So it's 2 men and then a youth leader who's also a pastor's kid, and so it's just hilarious.
Yes.
And they serve in the 3-year-old class,
That is
and
not what I thought you
it's
were gonna say.
no, no, it is incredible. We go in to help with bathroom stuff, but I walk past there, one of them has the puppet on his hand, and he's doing the voices. You got somebody playing air guitar in the background to work, like, they are having a blast. And he came up to, someone on staff and said, "I have not experienced that much joy in my life in a long time." And now he serves
Oh,
every single week,
that is
every single
so
week.
sweet.
Yeah, and so it's calling out people, "Hey, I saw you. I saw you do that," or, "I saw you jump on that need. You you fixed our printer real quick,
Mhm.
for check-in. Would you mind helping on our check-in team and
Yeah.
being a presence for when the technology goes down?" Fortunately, our building is set up. I know there's some buildings, and I've been in churches like this, where you don't see everybody on a Sunday.
Yes.
Because fortunately, our building is set up to where I see people on a Sunday,
Mhm.
and so I'm able to look, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot 'em a text later this week." Um, and you're seeing these things happen, and you have a gifting, um, in this area. You were incredibly patient with that person.
Mhm.
Or you're really good at typing things in on a computer really quickly. Actually, we could use you for a new family check-in because we gotta get that process real quick.
Yep.
Um, and so that has been the key to recruiting, is it's coming from the top down. Every single person is serving somewhere in our church for the most part. I can think of very few people who are covenant members of this church that don't serve,
Yeah.
because we hold them accountable to that. And we ask, "Hey, why aren't you serving?" Because a lot of times that allows a ministry opportunity
Mhm.
of, my life is really crazy.
Yeah.
Where are your priorities? That's a ministry opportunity.
Yeah.
Or, actually my mom's dying, which is terrible. We
Right.
didn't know that, and so that's why you're not serving, and that's a ministry opportunity right there to
Mhm.
minister to that person. Why aren't you doing this? Like, give me some more insight and ways that I can help you grow as a person,
Yeah.
whether that is in kids ministry or whether that's on the worship team or the prayer
Mhm.
team. Um, so that those things, and then being very, very intentional about looking for things in people,
Yeah.
and seeing people and seeing where their gifting is and where that can fit into your ministry.
Gosh, that's so many good things, and I think it is it does feel hard sometimes, right? It feels hard to keep people accountable and to have those hard conversations and to ask those hard questions and to feel like you're probing a little bit, but 9 times out of 10, I'm so glad you mentioned that, like, it's a ministry opportunity. It's an opportunity to have deeper conversation, to get to know your people, to help them feel known and feel seen inside the church. And sometimes it's just the leaders getting over their own hurdle of, "I'm gonna offend somebody," or, "I am like, I don't want to be that bold. I don't want to ask those hard questions." And it's just kind of sometimes it just we need to get over and get out of the way of our own self so that we can freely, with humility and tons of grace, like you've mentioned, ask some of these questions and ask people to serve and point out the things everybody wants to be noticed for the areas that they're gifted in. Like nobody would be like, "Oh, no, thank you. I'm actually horrible at that." Like, it is no people want to feel seen, and that's where so much of the beauty of church community comes when you just notice, when you notice people, when you lift your eyes and see who's around you and just remember and notice, and I think that's, like, such a key thing, and I wanna go back and, like, remind people that, like, as Christmas is coming, Christmas is often an opportunity where you have an ask for people to serve on Christmas Eve. And I wanna go back to, like, your story of Easter and how you gained a good amount of volunteers because you created an environment that they can't it's hard to say no to because there is joy to be found in there. There is community that is being offered, and so as people are making these asks for the holiday season and for Christmas and Advent, it is think about after. Think about the follow-up. Think about how you are inviting people into this team and be intentional. And you never know, you may gain some new volunteers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you have to capitalize on those moments where it's crucial, and you have to be prepared for that. You have to be
Mhm.
prepared for follow-up. And it's also really important in those moments, your long for the short-term events in your long-term vision to make those sure those short-term things are well run too.
Yes.
And they're organized, because if people serve for an Easter or for a vacation Bible school or for Christmas Eve or something like that, and they are not impressed with the organization and how things run,
Mhm.
they don't wanna be part of that because they're gonna
Yeah.
associate, "Nope, they're unorganized. They don't know what they're doing. I don't wanna be part of a train wreck."
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, I'm not
I mean, to
jumping
be
in.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if administration, I love it. I like it's actually one of my spiritual gifts, and not a lot of people have that, and I feel like it's super boring, but I love administration,
Yeah.
and so that's something I feel like I'm pretty strong in. But there are other things, the hard asks, that's not my strong suit, so I have to work on that, and
Mhm.
fortunately, I actually am able to pass on my administrative task to people here that are able to take those things over for me
Yeah.
so I can work on that and grow in that. But if you don't have someone, if you are not administration minded and you
Mhm.
can't do the administration, find somebody that is, that can help you get the systems going in the direction you need to. And you might need to take a month out of your work calendar and say, this is the month where we
Yep.
improve all of our systems.
Yeah.
And I'm going to focus on this. And that might mean that some other things you're passionate about get thrown to the side for a little
Mhm.
bit, but it's so you can pick those things back up and they can be even better than they were before because the systems are working. You have to have a good system and you have to work the system.
Yeah. Work the system. That's right.
Mhm.
Okay, Megan, I know that you, over the years, you've created some resources. So if people want to learn more about you or your administrative resources, where's the best place to find those?
Yeah, so the best place to find those is deeperkidman.com. And you can search for Megan's Ministry on there. My name is spelled Meghan. Always have to say that. Don't forget the H.
Yep.
And you can search for that. And I have tons of administrative resources, lots of event planning guides, lots of
Mhm.
helps and things like that. And so that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Megan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.